I spent 3 years with Angus, giving myself to him every night. It wasn't until I got pregnant that he finally agreed to marry me, promising a lifetime of love and devotion. Before I could even say yes, everything sadly changed. The very next day, he dragged me to the hospital and heartlessly demanded that I get an abortion. "Get rid of it," he ordered. "I will never have a child with anyone other than Hallie." I swallowed the pain, begging him to spare our baby. Later, I found out why. His first love had come back. That's when he started calling me disgusting, a clingy burden he couldn't shake off. However, he forgot one thing. I was never with him for love. Among the race of spirit fairies, we believe in repaying debts. If we fulfill a benefactor's 100 wishes, our debt would be cleared. In the past 3 years, I had already granted 97 of Angus' wishes. Only 3 more remained. Once I fulfilled them all, I could finally go home. "Even if you give birth to that child, I won't acknowledge it. It'll just be an unwanted bastard," said the same man who, just yesterday, had promised me the grandest wedding. In the obstetrics ward, all pretense shattered as he glared at me, his voice laced with venom. "You will get rid of this baby, right?" I stared at him, stunned by how desperate he was to erase our child and run back to the woman he truly loved. My mind drifted back to the moment I first told him I was pregnant, how Angus had been overwhelmed with joy, tears in his eyes. Swallowing the ache in my chest, I forced myself to stay calm. "Does this count as your 97th wish?" So many of his wishes had been the same, he just wanted me to say I loved him. I had once told Angus that after fulfilling 100 of his wishes, I would leave. But because I wanted to stay by his side, I had held back from granting the last few. Now, he only saw my words as a cruel reminder of his betrayal. "You don't need to bring up the past," he snapped. "You were never anything more than Hallie's replacement." I met his gaze with equal steadiness. "So, does this count as wish number 97? "Yes," he growled, exasperated. "I'm begging you, just get rid of it." The way he rushed me, as if I were some pathetic, clinging mistress, made my chest tighten. Yet, I pushed the pain down, turned to the doctor and said calmly, "All right." Angus froze, caught off guard. He hadn't expected me, the woman who once gave him everything, to agree so easily. Lying on the cold operating table, I felt the sting of the injection as the doctor administered the abortion medication. The pain of my womb contracting curled me into a ball, but the pain of betrayal cut even deeper. Just yesterday, everyone believed Angus was hopelessly in love with me. Now, he stood outside the procedure room, waiting, as if he couldn't feel at ease until he was certain our child was gone. As I lay there, losing the baby, he was right outside, speaking to his friend Milo. "Make sure Hallie never finds out about this," he said. "She'd be furious. Besides, Hallie is the only woman I ever want to spend my life with." At 6 months pregnant, I could still feel the baby inside me, its life slipping away bit by bit. Maybe this child was never meant to exist. "Angus, if you loved that woman so much, why did you even marry me?" Milo's voice was sharp with accusation. "And what about Alros? You're really going to make her abort a baby she's carried for 6 months just because Hallie came back?" He continued, "You did this because you know Alros loves you. You think you can do whatever you want to her, don't you?" Everyone knew Milo had feelings for me. He had always wanted to take me away from Angus. Angus let out a cold laugh. "The only reason I kept her around was because she looked like Hallie. Alros had stolen years of happiness from Hallie. This is what she owes her. If she knows what's good for her, she'll disappear and never come back." Knowing that I was just someone else's replacement ripped my heart apart. So what he said and did was all a lie. I was never special, just a stand-in for the woman Angus truly loved. Every bit of love I thought we had was nothing more than my own foolish delusion. In that moment, my world collapsed. Angus didn't even try to spare me. He wanted me to get the message and leave as soon as possible. Even as I lay in that cold, sterile room, losing our child, he stood outside, saying things that cut through me like a hot knife through butter. Outside, I could hear his mocking tone as he talked to Milo. You like her, right? Take her. Want to bet if she'd ever want to go with you? There was a time when, if Milo so much as looked at me, Angus would pull me into his arms, holding me close in silent warning. Now, I was nothing more than something to be handed off. I stared at the tiny, lifeless baby that had just been taken from me. Swallowing the pain clawing at my chest, I reminded myself just 3 more wishes. Then I could finally go home. Among the spirit fairies, all debts must always be repaid. Angus had saved my life once and I owed him 100 acts of gratitude before I could return home. 3 years. Over 1,000 days and nights by his side. Through all those years of his love, I had countless chances to remind him to make a wish. But I never did. Because I wanted to stay. After the abortion procedure, Milo placed a cup of warm water in front of me. Thanks, I said softly, but my eyes were already on Angus. Angus just smirked, turning to Milo. Even after I made her lose a child, she still won't leave with you. I simply said, once I complete your last 3 wishes, I'll be gone for good. Angus waved me off as he strode away. I'm done playing your little 100 wishes game. You don't need to put on this act to hold on to me, he added without looking back. No matter what you do, you'll never compare to even a single strand of Hallie's hair. I didn't touch the warm water Milo had brought me. I didn't want to owe anyone anything anymore. Instead, I went back to the Davidsons' home. The place was buzzing with music and laughter. Angus had thrown a grand party, filling our home with guests. The moment I stepped inside, every gaze turned to me, expectant, as if waiting for a show. And then I saw her. My eyes scanned through the crowd, finding her instantly. In that moment, I finally understood why Angus had wanted me to say I loved him. Because all along, he had never really been looking at me. He had only ever been seeing that woman in my face. Angus looked completely caught off guard when he saw me. What are you doing here? Can't you stop clinging to me like some desperate leech? He must have forgotten he was the one who begged me to come. Just a week ago, he insisted on throwing me a birthday party. I told him I didn't like big gatherings. Yet, that man wouldn't take no for an answer. Then I'll make a wish, he said. I wish for my Rose to attend the birthday party I planned for her. Will you grant me that? Look at him now, the party had become a grand welcome for Hallie. Here, I was nothing more than an unwelcomed guest. I swallowed the humiliation and bitterness. I've come, just like you wished. This is the fulfillment of your 96th wish. Angus, desperate to distance himself from me in front of Hallie, acted like I was nobody to him. I had done what I came to do. So, I simply left the place. However, Hallie's call stopped me. I heard that while I was gone these past 3 years, you've taken care of Angus, mistress. It must have been difficult for you. Hallie let out a delicate sigh, feigning innocence. While I was by the lake just a moment ago, the ring Angus gave me slipped off into the pool. Why don't you take the ring, mistress? It's worth $800,000. Consider it a payment for your troubles. I had no interest in entertaining Hallie's little show and continued to leave. By then, I could hear the subtle edge of displeasure in her voice. She let out a dramatic sigh. Oh, that's right, I almost forgot. Miss Traverse just had an abortion, didn't she? I see, so you can't swim. That was my mistake for assuming too much. Angus hurried to reassure Hallie. I told you, the child with her was just an accident. The only children I'll ever have will be with you. I heard his hurried steps catching up to me. Angus stopped me from leaving. Those last 3 wishes you mentioned, do they still count? I told him they did. Of course, Angus didn't believe I was truly repaying a debt. But he was confident that I would say anything just to keep clinging to him. Watching him grow impatient, urging me to retrieve the ring from the lake, I suddenly recalled a moment in the past. Back then, when Angus's family heirloom had slipped into the water, he had held me close after I returned from taking the golden bracelet. The man trembled with worry as he scolded me to not do something like that again. But now, he didn't even think twice. So, I stepped into the lake. The freezing water rushed up, filling my nose and lungs. Inside the house, laughter and music carried on, oblivious. I dove deeper into the pool, pushing through the suffocating cold. Suddenly, a sharp object at the bottom sliced into my feet. It didn't take long before my fingers closed around the ring. By the time I surfaced, my abdomen throbbed and blood trickled from the soles of my feet. All I saw in Angus's eyes was disgust. "Can you stop with this pathetic act? It's disgusting." I placed the ring firmly in Hallie's hand. "This is your 98th wish," I said to Angus before walking away. I forced myself to ignore the pain at my feet and went past the Davidsons' house, all aware that Angus stared at me with a stunned gaze. A replacement was just a replacement. Once the real one returned, the replacement became nothing more than a stray dog, barely hanging on. Though my feet were injured, the cold that caught up my heart felt far worse. The coldness spread to my physical body, like an ice block that couldn't thaw. I spent the next 3 days in the hospital. During that time, I heard that Angus never left Hallie's side. He told people I was just a pathetic leech who wouldn't let go. I felt awful sick, restless, unable to sleep. Then, a news notification caught my eye. Prince Angus's woman exposed as an adult film actress. I clicked on its link. The woman in the video was clearly visible. She was Hallie Palmer. Even the tiny mole on her neck was identical. In the comments, some people insisted the video was AI generated. I knew Angus had hired people to spread that lie. But the public wasn't convinced. "No way, this is AI. The tech isn't advanced enough to make fingers look this natural." A message from Angus popped up on my phone. "I'll pay you. Take the blame, say the woman in the video is you." I stared at the message for a long time, my heart feeling as if it had been kicked hard. Take the blame and claim that I was the one in the adult video? If I did that, I'd never be able to show my face in a straight again. I swallowed the pain and typed back. "So, is this your 99th wish?" He agreed without hesitation. He just wanted me to clear Hallie's name as soon as possible. When Angus came to find me, the first thing he did was take me to a tattoo artist and have a small black mole inked onto my neck, in the exact same spot as Hallie's. "Hallie wants to go into the entertainment industry," he said. "She can't have a scandal like this ruining her future. Don't worry, I'll make sure this whole thing gets buried quickly." Hallie wanted to be a celebrity? That was the excuse he came up with? Angus went so far as to hold a press conference to completely erase the stain of Hallie's scandal. I stood on stage, facing the cameras. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm the woman in the video. I deeply regret any trouble I've caused Miss Hallie Palmer." Instantly, the crowd erupted in outrage. People hurled insults at me, calling me shameless, a whore, a liar. I had never felt such humiliation in my life. By the time I stepped down, my legs were so weak I nearly collapsed. But then, for the first time, Angus caught me. He draped his suit jacket over my shoulders. "You actually went through with it," he murmured, almost in disbelief. Angus said, "Even if I marry Hallie, I can still make space for you outside of my family." He said that like he was doing me a favor. Like he was granting me the privilege of being his mistress. A sharp, unbearable pain spread through my chest. For the first time, I refused him. "I won't be your mistress." His expression darkened. "This is my 100th wish. Isn't this what you wanted?" I had wanted to fulfill all 100 wishes. But if I agreed to stay by his side, I could never go home. So, I couldn't say yes. It was the first time Angus had ever been rejected. His face twisted between shock and anger before he finally spat, "I'm not falling for your little push-and-pull games. This is your last chance. Walk away now and you'll never get another one." As I left, strangers on the street whispered, pointing at me. "Look, that's the girl from the leaked video. You think she's some kind of sex addict?" A man walked up without hesitation, groping me. "Why act all shy now? You didn't hold back in that AV, did you?" Panicked, I shoved him away and ran home, slamming the door shut behind me. I collapsed onto the couch, shaking. And then, finally, I broke. Angus, what gives you the right to treat me like this? What right? Despair crashed over me, suffocating. I just wanted to go home, just go home. Since the scandal broke out, I hadn't stepped outside once. All I was waiting for was Angus to make his final wish, then I could finally leave. Yet, he refused to let go, insisting I become his mistress. I couldn't agree. We fought, over and over, neither of us willing to back down. He wouldn't change his wish. And I wouldn't compromise. Eventually, Angus' patience finally snapped. I already buried that scandal. If anyone dares to bring it up again, I'll break their damn neck. Isn't this what you wanted? Haven't you been clinging to me this whole time just so you could stay? So drop the act. Then he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Not long after, another message popped up on my phone. Fine. I'll change my wish. Bring Hallie back to her husband. Chaos erupted within the Davidson family. Word spread quickly and soon, I learned the truth. Years ago, Hallie had married a powerful crime boss from one of the northern countries. A man with wealth, influence and absolute control. After the wedding, she realized something: money was all the crime boss had. The man was a monster, his violence unimaginable. When Hallie escaped, she was barely human, her body covered in wounds, not a single patch of her skin was uninjured. Those adult videos? It was the crime boss who forced Hallie to film them. He had always known where Hallie was. Yet, in Northern Continent, the law reigned supreme. Even with all his crime boss power, he couldn't simply take her by force. Today, fate had handed him leverage. Angus's grandfather had been taken hostage while conducting business near a Straits border. The demand? Hand Hallie over to him. However, Hallie had barely escaped with her life. If she went back, there was no telling what horrors awaited her. The crime boss was infamous along the border, his brutality unmatched. He had a sick hobby: mutilating women, severing their limbs, displaying their heads like trophies in glass vases. Angus knew that giving Hallie up meant sending her to certain death. So instead, he turned to the one person who looked just like her, me. I was the perfect substitute. The perfect sacrifice. When I saw Angus's message, for one fleeting, foolish moment, I thought he was reaching out to apologize. Now, I realized how naive I was. For Hallie, he was willing to throw me to the wolves. Even if it meant my death. I thought I had grown numb to the pain, that nothing he did could hurt me anymore. Yet, Angus always found a way to prove me wrong. Angus, I'll do just as you wished. I'm finally done with you. Before I was handed over as a hostage, Angus leaned in close, his voice soft in attempt to comfort me. Once my grandfather is safe, I'll have Barkane's police force rescue you. After that, don't ever show up in front of Hallie again. I'll arrange a new identity for you, you can stay by my side. I love you. You know that, Rose. I agreed to whatever Angus said. With that, Angus' eyes lit up, as if truly pleased. Not that it mattered, this so-called 101st wish didn't count anyway. And I had to give him credit. To convince me to walk willingly toward my death, Angus had spun the sweetest, most affectionate lies. Lies so sickening they made my stomach turn. Once the hostage exchange was made, the crime boss's men shoved me into a basement jail. Severed limbs and decapitated heads lay scattered across the floor. The tools of the most brutal tortures ever devised hung from the walls. I couldn't even begin to imagine the agony these instruments could inflict. I didn't want to. The next day, Angus arrived in a frenzy, bringing an entire police force with him, storming into Northern Country's territory. But the police only shook their heads. The person you're looking for? She's already been taken. The gang packed up and vanished before we got here. Angus stood frozen in the blood-soaked basement, staring at the carnage around him. He couldn't move. Couldn't think. He couldn't even begin to imagine what it would be like to spend a single night in this place. Would anyone even survive out of this? The blood pooled beneath his feet, staining the cold stone floor a deep, sickening red. His heartbeat pounded louder and louder, a dreadful, suffocating rhythm. It felt like something important, something irreplaceable, had slipped through his fingers. This time, it was gone for good. His vision blurred, his body swayed, and it took someone grabbing his arm to steady him. Then, with a sudden sharp breath, he snapped back to reality. Find a woman named Auros Traverse. $1 million reward for any lead. I settled in a remote town on the outskirts of a strait. Thankfully, my spirit fairy's kin had found me in time and saved me. However, my body was a mess. Scars crisscrossed my skin, whip marks carved so deep they felt like they had reached my bones. Flesh torn open, blood barely dried. If they had arrived even a moment later, I would have died in that dungeon. Word of Angus's frantic search for me spread quickly, but when I heard it, I only laughed bitterly. Wasn't this what he wanted? I was gone. So why was he looking for me now? I had spent too long tangled in the mortal world, tainted by its trivialities. Now that I had finally severed those ties, I had to wait 15 more days before I could return to my people. For the past 3 days, from the attic window of my small lodging, I had seen him. Every single day. Angus, passing by on the road outside. He held a sketch of my face in his hands, stopping passers-by every few steps. Have you seen this woman? His eyes were red, frantic. He searched without much rest, circling the town, asking everyone he met only to leave in disappointment every time. I couldn't help but wonder. Had Hallie gotten herself into trouble again? Did he need me to take the fall for her one more time? The thought made me scoff. But the first person to find me wasn't Angus. It was Milo, the heir of the Newman family. Or rather, that was just one of his identities. As Milo stood before me, I finally saw it. He was one of my own. A spirit fairy. And that face. I remembered it now. He was my actual betrothed from my clan. Before I could even speak, Milo sat down beside me and took my hand. His grip was warm. Steady. The chief said that this was a punishment of your past deeds. You had to go through it. I wasn't allowed to interfere. I could only take human form and stay by your side, Rose. But now that your ties to the mortal world have been severed, I have no reason to hold back anymore. No wonder his presence had always felt so familiar. So this was why. In the small town within a strait, Milo was the one who took care of me, watching over me, making sure I ate, tending to my wounds. In the past, I refused to even meet him. Now, I hadn't wanted to be tied to the mortal world anymore. Milo wasn't a mortal himself. He was one of my own. And that changed everything. When Angus finally found me, Milo was sitting by my side, gently feeding me corn soup. Angus stood frozen in place, staring up at the building where I had been all along, the very street he had wandered day after day, searching for me. Despite watching him pass by countless times, I had never once called out to him. Now, after days of relentless searching, he had finally found me, only to see me sitting beside Milo. The anger he had barely been holding back erupted all at once. Do you have any idea how long I've been looking for you? Why are you even in this place like nothing happened? I blinked at him, unfazed. Hadn't he been the one who told me to leave? The one who called me a leech, desperate and pathetic? Then he was mad that I was gone? 7 days, he bit out, his voice hoarse. I've searched for you for 7 goddamn days. And you were just here the whole time? The man standing in front of me barely resembled the Angus I once knew. His usual pristine, slicked-back hair was a mess, like he hadn't slept or taken care of himself in days. I met his gaze, my voice eerily calm. I told you, once I granted your 100th wish, I would disappear. The last one was a bonus, the 101st. Angus stormed toward me, shoving past Milo and sitting at my bedside. His fingers trembled as he cupped my arm, his touch surprisingly gentle. His brows furrowed. Why are you so badly hurt? Milo's voice was ice. Why? Isn't that thanks to you? Milo glared at Angus, his jaw clenched so tight that a vein bulged on his forehead. I gently tugged at Milo's sleeve, silently telling him to let it go. With a deep breath, he swallowed his anger and sat back down beside me. Patiently, he blew on the steaming bowl of herbal medicine before bringing it to my lips. Angus scoffed at Milo. "You're really going all out to win her over, huh? But don't waste your time, Rose only has eyes for me." He said it like it was a fact, like he truly believed I would never let him go. Then, as if to prove his point, he softened his gaze, his expression dripping with regret. Carefully, he reached out, tenderly tending to my wounds, his eyes turning red with emotion. But again, wasn't he the one who had inflicted these wounds in the first place? Wasn't he the one who had handed me over to that sadistic crime lord without hesitation? I shoved his hand away and lowered my head, taking a sip of the medicine Milo had prepared for me. Back when I was with Angus, Milo had always been there watching over me, offering kindness. I had kept my distance and Angus had loved that. Every time he saw me act indifferent toward Milo, he would smirk in satisfaction, thinking he had nothing to worry about. This time, when he saw me accepting Milo's care without resistance, when he realized I no longer belonged to him, his temper snapped. His grip was rough as he grabbed my injured arm and yanked me toward him. Pain shot through me as I recoiled, wrenching my arm free. My voice was cold. "Stop flattering yourself. Isn't this what you wanted? I'm gone. Now you can finally be with your precious Hallie." "What? Did you come all this way just to ask me to be your mistress?" Angus froze, his hand hovering midair. His face stiffened, as if he hadn't expected me to call him out so directly. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "If you stay with me, whatever she has you'll have too." So that was it. All this so-called affection, all this urgency, just to get me to be his mistress. How had I not seen it before? How had I ever thought he was worth loving? "Rose and I are engaged." "Who the hell do you think you are?" Milo grabbed Angus by the collar, ready to drag him out. They started throwing punches, fists landing with sharp, ugly sounds. Even in the middle of a fight, Angus looked at me with that same maddening confidence, like he still believed I belonged to him. "Rose, you know I've always cared about you. Come back with me. I'll give you everything except a ring. Whatever she has, you'll have too. You don't have to be with Milo just to get back at me." I let out a cold laugh, shaking my head. "And how many times have you hurt me because of Hallie? What makes you think I'd ever forgive you?" Angus's face twisted with something that almost looked like regret. Hallie had just come back. I wanted to make her feel secure. "I admit I put you through a lot just to please her. But if you come back, I promise I'll treat you both the same." I let out a cold laugh. "How touching. You're really pouring your heart out just to make me your mistress. Didn't you say you loved me?" Hearing Angus shamelessly grovel made my stomach churn. Thankfully, Milo slammed the door in his face in the end. I didn't want to see Angus again, not in my final days here. So, Milo and I left. During that time, Milo told me things I had never known. Turns out, leaders of the spirit fairies hadn't arranged our engagement just for the sake of an alliance. My clan leader had done it because Milo had loved me since we were children. Days passed and Angus never came looking for me again. Then, one day, Milo and I saw the headlines: Angus and Hallie's engagement was set for tomorrow. I had no intention of going. But Hallie sent me an invitation. Milo, wanting to stir things up, insisted on taking me. When we arrived, Hallie was standing by the lake, lazily twirling her engagement ring between her fingers. She smirked. "I heard Angus went looking for you." Her voice dripped with mockery. "Tell me, you're not actually thinking of crawling back as his mistress, are you?" I met her gaze and smiled. "You and Angus? A match made in heaven, filth and a whore. You don't actually think Angus loves you, do you?" Hallie smirked, her tone dripping with mockery. "He only cares about you because you look a little like me." She twirled the ring on her finger, watching me with amusement. Honestly, I'm curious, how long do you think his so-called love will last? A man like him, loving a woman who's been used by a crime lord? She knew exactly what fueled Angus's obsession. It wasn't love, it was nostalgia, a desperate attempt to cling to the past. Then, out of nowhere, she let out a sharp laugh. Let's see just how much he really loves me. With a sudden move, Hallie threw herself into the lake. Water splashed everywhere as she thrashed wildly, screaming for help. Without hesitation, Angus dove in, pulling her to shore. Dripping wet, he turned to me, eyes blazing with fury. How could you be so cruel? Do you have any idea that Hallie is pregnant? His voice shook with outrage. A woman as heartless as you, I wouldn't take you back even if you begged. I watched his panic, his desperation, and I laughed. Had he already forgotten who was on their knees just yesterday, begging me to return? Milo chuckled beside me, his arm tightening around my waist. Angus, let's be real, who do you think you are? With your family, your looks, and your morality, what makes you think Rose would ever choose you? I ignored Angus's fury. Hallie really has it tough with you, playing the devoted lover to her face while sneaking around, begging me to come back, I said. Angus didn't spare me another glance as he rushed Hallie to the hospital. Once upon a time, watching this would have shattered me. But it didn't even stir a single ripple in my heart now. I came here today for one reason, to set the record straight. To clear my name, once and for all. 100 favors repaid. Now, it was time to settle the score. By the lake, Milo held me close as we waited for the guests to arrive. Soon, I would expose the truth behind that scandalous video. After that, I would disappear from this world forever. Milo reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from my forehead. His touch was gentle, but his gaze burned with something deeper. 3 years. I had been trapped in the mortal world for 3 years. And for 3 years, Milo had waited for me. I met his eyes, so steady, so sure, then wrapped my arms around his neck and kissed him. A light, fleeting touch, like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. But for Milo, it was the breaking of a dam. The moment he realized I had chosen him, he pulled me in, his embrace fierce and unrelenting. Then came his kiss, desperate, hungry, overwhelming. 3 years of longing and restraint, all unleashed in a single breath. From my point of view, I saw Angus standing at the edge of my vision. The veins on his forehead bulged with fury. I had never seen him this angry before. Was it because Hallie had fallen into the water? How touching, he really was devoted to her. Angus stormed over, closing the distance in just a few strides and yanked me into his arms. With his usual possessive arrogance, he tried to kiss me only for me to slap him across the face. I have a fiancé now. Have some self-respect. He stared at me for a long time, his expression eerily similar to mine when I had first read his message, asking me to take Hallie's place. Don't be mad, alright? I admit my tone was harsh just now. It's only because Hallie is pregnant. I had to put on a show for her. You used to listen to me the most. You were even willing to take the fall for Hallie. How could you possibly stop loving me just like that? Even now, Angus still believed I couldn't leave him. How utterly ridiculous. Seeing his indecisive expression, a thought crossed my mind. I smiled, suddenly amused. Alright, I'll give you a chance. If you publicly announce that Hallie was the real woman in that scandalous video, I'll forgive you. Just as I expected, Angus cursed me under his breath, calling me ungrateful, before storming off in shame and frustration. I had already told him I was completely over him. Everything I had done for him was nothing more than repaying a debt. At the engagement ceremony, the hall was packed with guests. The man who should have been focused entirely on his fiancée kept glancing in my direction. Then, I picked up the wedding microphone and spoke. I know many of you may have misconceptions about me. Hallie and I look very similar. When I was younger and naive, I worked as a body double for Mr. Davidson for a few years. But I was unaware of it at the time. And as for that scandalous video, that wasn't me. After my revelation, the massive wedding screen lit up, displaying chat logs, messages from Angus himself, instructing me to take Hallie's place. There, concrete proof. The guests, who were all friends and family of Angus, fell into stunned silence. This was the reason I had invited the press. Journalists swarmed forward, shoving microphones in Hallie's face. "Ms. Palmer, can you confirm if you were the woman in the video? Did you participate in the video willingly? Because, from the footage, you seem to be enjoying it quite a bit." Hallie threw herself into Angus's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Angus pointed at Milo and me, his face twisted with rage. "You two filthy traitors, shameless. You were messing around behind my back this whole time, weren't you, you whore? Milo, you really have no standards, do you? Going after a woman I threw away?" The next day, every headline in a Strait was about how Angus's newly engaged fiancée was the woman from the leaked video. In this day and age, no woman could walk away from a scandal like that unscathed. The Davidson stock took a massive hit, but I couldn't care less. Only 3 more days and I could finally go home. I would disappear without a trace, leaving nothing behind in this world. Angus didn't even know why he was this furious. It wasn't about Hallie. It was the sight of Milo being close to Rose. Something about it made his blood boil uncontrollably. Behind him, Hallie stirred in bed, her hands trailing up his chest. "Our baby is gone," she murmured. "But don't blame Rose. We can always have another." Only then did it hit Angus: he and Hallie had lost their child. Strangely, Angus didn't feel the slightest urge to blame Rose. After half-heartedly comforting Hallie until she fell asleep, he mindlessly scrolled through his phone until one video stopped him cold. By the time he finished watching, his emotions were in complete turmoil. Grabbing his phone and jacket, he rushed out the door. The video was an informational clip explaining a certain legend. When a spirit fairy is saved by a human, they must repay the debt 100 times. After that, they disappear forever. It also mentioned that fox spirits from a particular bloodline have a small blue mole at the corner of their eyes. A memory surfaced back when he first met Rose. He had asked her, "Why is the mole at the corner of your eye blue?" She had smiled and told him, "It's a trait of our bloodline. Every spirit fairy from my clan has one. You saved me, so I must grant you 100 wishes before I can return home." At the time, he had dismissed it as nothing more than a fanciful tale. He hadn't thought much of the small blue fox he had once rescued by the lake. Now, that memory sent a chill down his spine. When Angus finally found me, the first thing he asked was, "You're a spirit fairy?" I had answered Angus' question 1,000 times before. I had told him over and over that once I fulfilled 100 wishes, I would disappear from his life forever. Angus had never believed me. To him, it had always been nothing more than a pathetic excuse to cling to him. All of a sudden, he was asking if it was real. "You actually believe in these superstitions now?" I laughed softly, tilting my head. "Didn't you always say it was just a ploy to keep you around?" He froze, his expression shifting. For the first time, it seemed like he was beginning to realize things were slipping out of his control. "You're leaving?" Desperation flickered in his eyes. I had never seen him like this before. "Tell me, are you really leaving?" The moment he said it, even he seemed to realize how absurd it sounded. "I know it's ridiculous, but when you weren't around, I couldn't sleep. I started to feel afraid that you'd disappear forever, that you'd never come back to me. I thought you still loved me. I thought if I just held on long enough, you'd return. But I've loved Hallie since we were kids. I never knew how to let her go, and that's why I dash." His voice trembled. "Come back to me. Please." Maybe it was the fear of losing me that finally made him realize. For the first time, there was no arrogance in his eyes. Only regret. Angus was desperately pleading. I smiled, indulgent, almost amused. "All right. But first, I need to see your sincerity. I knew it, you still love me." Angus lit up like a child who had just gotten his favorite toy. He pulled me into a tight embrace, unwilling to let go. I pushed him away. Sort out your mess first. Then come find me. Reluctantly, he let me go, his gaze full of determination as he turned to leave. Without further ado, I walked away without hesitation. Today was my last day in the mortal world. After I left, I used the secret arts of my kind to glimpse into the human realm one last time. Angus had arranged a secret wedding. A wedding meant to be hidden, kept in the shadows. Even now, he still wanted to have it both ways. If he loved Hallie so much, why was he still out here chasing spirits? At the secret ceremony, he waited the entire day. When I never showed, he didn't even lash out, just stood there, dazed, murmuring to himself, "She still won't forgive me." Then he went mad searching for me, flooding the city with missing person reports. He no longer bothered to hide his lingering feelings for me from Hallie. For a whole month, he played the devoted fiancé by day while desperately searching for me by night. Maybe all mortal males were like Angus. Once they finally win over their first love, her actual lover becomes nothing more than a burden to them. Angus and Hallie began fighting constantly. During one of their worst arguments, Angus pointed a finger in her face and shouted, "If it weren't for you, Rose wouldn't have left. When you married that mob boss overseas, why didn't he just kill you?" Seeing all that, I finally felt a sense of justice. I stopped watching the mortal world and devoted myself fully to utilizing fairy arts. A year passed before I saw Angus again. When I left, I had abandoned a memento lapis lazuli my father had given me long ago. I returned to retrieve it and found Angus by the lake where he had once saved me. I'd heard he had divorced Hallie in a messy, public scandal. The once proud, meticulous man no longer even bothered to comb his hair. His once ambitious eyes had turned dull and lifeless, as if they might shatter at any moment. One day, out of the corner of his eye, he saw me. Disbelief flooded his face before he rushed forward, clutching my sleeve in desperation. "Rose. Rose. You've forgiven me, haven't you?" His voice broke as tears fell, large and unchecked, from his eyes. He pulled me into his arms. I didn't resist, but my gaze remained ice-cold. "I know I was wrong, Rose. I really do. You're the one I love most. I swear, I've realized my mistakes. I've already divorced Hallie. Every second I spent with her, I resented her. If it weren't for her, you never would have left. But wasn't he the one to blame for everything? He couldn't choose between us, unfaithful to both. Wasn't this just the consequence of his own choices?" I held back laughter. I wasn't the same person I used to be. All I wanted now was to get my jade pendant and never see him again. When I thought of him after returning to the Fox clan, all I felt was pure disgust. "Do you still have my pendant?" His expression shifted instantly, his grip tightening around the jade as if he were afraid I'd take it and disappear. "You're planning to leave the moment you get it back, aren't you?" His eyes turned desperate, his composure unraveling. It was as if the thought of losing me again was more than he could handle. "Please, don't go," he begged, his voice shaking. "Since you left, it feels like there's a hole in my chest. Nothing means anything anymore." As he unraveled before me, his face contorted with anguish, I reached out, my voice soft and soothing. "Why would I leave? I've seen everything you've done for me. I don't blame you anymore. I want to stay with you, truly, but without the pendant, I can't remain here in my physical form." I knew it, I knew there was a reason. He was just like before, so sure that I loved him. Once, I truly did, but not anymore. Just as he once deceived me with promises of forever, I fed him the same illusion. I told him that if he gave me the pendant, I would stay by his side for a lifetime. Without hesitation, he handed it over, his arms wrapping around me in a desperate embrace, as if he could hold me there by sheer force of will. He held me for what felt like an eternity, unwilling to let go. Finally, he loosened his grip, convinced that I wouldn't leave. I smiled, murmuring an excuse about wanting to admire the lake. Then, without looking back, I stepped into the water and vanished. The last thing I heard was his voice, raw, broken and echoing in the night. "You lied to me. You promised me forever." In the days that followed, the rumor spread. The once proud heir of the Davidsons had gone lunatic. People whispered that Angus had driven away the one woman who truly loved him. Yet he refused to believe it. To this day, he stays around by the lake, convinced she's still there. In the dead of winter, he threw himself into the freezing lake. For an entire hour, he stayed there searching, waiting desperate to find the woman who had vanished from his life. Not a single elder of the Davidsons could persuade him to come out. By the time they dragged him from the water, his body was trembling violently from the cold. When he woke up, he was no longer the same. His mind had shattered. All he could do was whisper her name over and over. Rose. Rose. From that day on, he told anyone who would listen that he had once saved a fox from drowning in this very lake. It wasn't long before the Davidsons' attendants let their guard down. Their broken heir waded into the lake once more this time, never to resurface. Another tale was added to the old legends, a warning of the spirit fairy who had seduced and lured a mortal man to his own doom. The end.